Why is it significant in these narratives that Jesus is born in Bethlehem, the city of David?
This is one of those points about which scholars are quite sure that Jesus was really born in Nazareth, but that for theological reasons, both Matthew and Luke place his birth in Bethlehem. The reason for that is that Bethlehem was the city of David, and the tradition within Judaism was that the Messiah would be descended from David. So to say that Jesus was born in Bethlehem is really making a claim about Jesus' status as the Messiah, the true King of the Jews, descended from David. The reason that most scholars think he was born in Nazareth, and even Roman Catholic scholars who might have more at stake in the birth stories than some Protestant scholars affirm this, is that Jesus is consistently referred to in the Gospels as Jesus of Nazareth. And naming a person by a village or a city is naming that person's place of birth. So we think historically Jesus was born in Nazareth, but to make this claim that he is the Messianic son of David, his birth is relocated parabolically to Bethlehem.
Now, it's Matthew who tells the story of the Magi, or the wise men. What's the significance of that in their visiting Jesus?
Well, the story of the wise men has at least two meanings within Matthew. On the one hand, the wise men are from the East. That is, they are Gentiles. They are non-Jews. And this is Matthew's way of anticipating that Jesus is the light in the darkness, not only for the Jewish people, but also for the Gentiles. Now, interestingly enough, in the rest of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus himself goes only to Jewish people, and also orders his followers to go nowhere among the Gentiles, but only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then, at the very end of his gospel, after the resurrection of Jesus, the risen Christ gives the command to his followers to go into all nations, meaning the Gentiles, the non-Jews, as well as the Jews. So Matthew anticipates that later Gentile mission with the story of the Magi coming to the star shining over the house where Jesus was born. And the Magi have a second function in Matthew's story as well. They're part of that much larger story of Herod's plot to destroy the one who has been born King of the Jews. Mm-hmm. It is through the Magi that Herod learns that a baby who is to be King of the Jews has been born. And we all remember, of course, how Herod tells the wise men, when you have found him, come and tell me that I might go and pay homage to him as well. But of course, Herod plans to kill him. And here, Herod's behavior is modeled after what Pharaoh did in the time of the birth of Moses.
Wouldn't it be true to say also that the Magi make an anti-imperial statement because they don't go back to Herod? They don't do his bidding.
Yes, the Magi do not report back to Herod. They instead, as the story puts it, go home by another way, by another road, another path. And it was T.S. Eliot who made that line so famous in his poem about the visit of the Magi, that they were changed by their visit to the place of Christ's birth, so they walk now on another road, on another path.
Which has a lot more meanings than a physical road. Mm-hmm. And then what about the star?
An important part of the story of the Magi is, of course, the magic star that guides them to the place of Jesus' birth. Now, many of us have heard people speculate about what that star was. Was it a comet? Was it a supernova? Was it a conjunction of three planets? And it seems that every Christmas there are stories in the media about what kind of natural phenomenon might this star have been. Well, I think it's really foolish to try to identify the star with a natural phenomenon, because this is a magic star. The star not only leads the wise men from the east to Jerusalem, where it stops, but then it turns left and goes 5 miles south to Bethlehem, where it stops over the very house that Jesus was born in. This is a star that moves with the precision of a global positioning device. And to try to understand it as a natural phenomenon misses the whole point of the story.
And the star then is a symbol of what?
The star makes use of that ancient archetypal religious imagery of light in the darkness. It is Matthew's way of saying, and Luke's way of saying also, with the luminous glory of God appearing in the night sky to the shepherds, that the birth of Jesus, the story of Jesus as a whole, is the story of light coming into the darkness. And thus, when the church, some 3.5 centuries later, chose the date for observing Christmas, it was perfect that they chose the winter solstice, because in the northern hemisphere, that is the time of the year when the darkness is the greatest and when the light begins to return.
And, of course, this fits the season of Christmas, which is the season of lights. Jesus is often called the light of the world, but you say this image has both personal and political significance here.
The political significance of the light imagery is that the divine father of the Roman emperor was Apollo, the god of light. And the Roman emperors from Caesar Augustus onwards styled themselves as Apollo. And so to say Jesus is the light of the world counters the imperial claim that Rome has brought light into the world by controlling the forces of disorder and chaos and darkness. Mm-hmm. So even the light imagery has a political meaning in the first century. But I want to emphasize, it's not just political. It's also deeply spiritual, personal, and religious. Mm-hmm. Jesus is the light of the world, both as the one who brings enlightenment, and he is the light of the world, and the emperor who claims to be the son of the God of light is not. It's mm-hmm. both.
And in the same sense, of course, we often talk about Christmas as a time for peace on earth, goodwill to all people, and everybody, whether they're war makers or not, uses peace quite liberally at this time of year. But you make a distinction between how the empire of Caesar Augustus achieved peace versus how Jesus wanted to achieve peace.
I think the phrase peace on earth, which is so central to the Christmas stories, has most often been domesticated and individualized, if you will, mm-hmm. by Christians, as if it's about peace of mind or a dream of peace, but not really about actual peace. And in the first century context, the Roman Empire claimed to have brought peace on earth through military victory. The peace that Jesus and early Christianity spoke about was a peace that would come about through justice. And it's the kind of peace that involved a deep commitment to nonviolence. It's very interesting that Christians for the first 3 centuries were deeply committed to nonviolence. It's oftentimes called the period of early Christian pacifism. And Christian writers from the 2nd and 3rd centuries consistently attribute that to the message of Jesus himself. So peace on earth in the birth stories and the emphasis upon love of enemies in the Gospels as a whole was meant concretely, do not follow the path of violence. So it's peace through achieving justice in the world rather than peace through conquest and victory.